How do you define a handheld? Does the PlayStation Portal, a device that doesn't run any games natively, count as a proper handheld now that you can technically use it as a standalone device? I took one on the road with me to find out. You know me, anything for a Skype. Am I the only one? Yeah. Am I sexual? Yeah. I went into this road test fully expecting it to be a total disaster. And spoiler alert, trying to demo this with Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown, the most obtuse game ever made. The PlayStation Portal became a real boy recently with the full public rollout of its cloud streaming update, making it the cheapest standalone device that you can play Cyberpunk 2077 on, which is an incredible proposition, but one that obviously comes with an armful of caveats, chiefly that the Portal doesn't run any games natively, relying on a fast, stable Wi-Fi connection to do literally anything at all. But in the modern world of Space Year 2025, is that really much of a caveat? I decided to test this by making a borrowed PlayStation Portal my only games machine for an entire week. A week in which I happened to be travelling the entire length of the UK with my internet access at the mercy of cell phone signal, public Wi-Fi, and the household broadband of the family I'll be staying with along the way, which, as it turns out, is fairly representative of the sort of speeds the average British household tends to have. The average broadband speed, and I looked it up in the United Kingdom, is about 60-70 megabits. And for most families, for most households, that's absolutely fine. People who do a bit of email, watch a bit, and what are you doing? Right in the middle of the road. For most people, that is absolutely fine. But as I found out, it's not really good enough for cloud gaming on PlayStation Portal, even though it's over 10 times what Sony suggests is the minimum. So firstly, for those of you who haven't used one, we better establish how well the Portal works in ideal conditions. I'm on a gigabit fibre connection here with a Wi-Fi 6 router, and whether it's streaming for the cloud or my PS5 Pro in the next room, I can confirm that it is basically flawless. In terms of control latency, it's obviously not quite as snappy as playing the game natively, but I don't know what I'm trying to make him do there. But it's certainly good enough. We've got a rock solid stream at 60Hz 1080p with minimal artifacting, a very clean and crisp image. I mean, you can tell it's not running natively, but it's not distracting. So around the house, certainly, this is a pristine way to experience your PlayStation games in this format. A lot of us in the games press, not naming names, got a bit carried away last month at the prospect of the Portal being fully untethered as a peripheral. Understandably so. However it's achieved, it is a pretty big deal that this sub £200 device can play PS5 games independently of a PS5, including AAA Sony exclusives and an ever-growing selection of third-party games in your library. And it's a solution that's almost as portable as the PSP and Vita were, or indeed as the Switch, Switch 2, Xbox ROG, Xbox Allied Carpets and Steam Deck are, assuming your local coffee shops have good enough Wi-Fi, or that you get rock solid 5G in your area and your data plan allows tethering and your phone isn't a piece of crap. All these assumptions are massively load-bearing. As far as I'm concerned, right, this is my basic definition of a proper handheld console. I mean, not this exactly, this is a daft thing from Blaze, but something you can play games on while visiting an Iron Age hill fort. What? Look, it's a pretty reasonable ask of any handheld gaming system. Does it work in an Iron Age hill fort? They didn't have the National Grid or Virgin Broadband 3,000 years ago, but in 1989, which is geologically speaking the same thing, they had the original Game Boy, and that worked anywhere. Hill forts, oceans, deserts, Dundee. And if the PlayStation Portal can't be relied upon to work in circumstances that wouldn't have troubled a plastic brick from the late 80s, then it isn't a proper handheld. You see where this is going, right? I know this isn't the Game Boy, it's just the closest equivalent I have to hand. Okay, so actually getting to my local Iron Age fort in the November rain turned out to be a single track road nightmare and kind of dangerous, to be honest. This might be one of the worst ideas I've ever had. I'm on a very, very narrow single track road and there doesn't seem to be anywhere to actually park to get to the hill fort I want to get to. There's plenty of footpaths, but it's like they're all assuming that you're already on foot. I ain't walking, man. I ain't got time for that. Oh,
How much is that going to cost to fix?
And so instead of going there, I went to a dilapidated 1990s retail park right on the edge of my city's 5G coverage. A similarly remote and desolate location, with the only practical difference being that I wouldn't have to get out the motor.
Still just in Bristol, by an abandoned cinema. Very much the ruined Iron Age hill fort of the modern age.
Look, what do you want from me? It was Baltic. And yeah, predictably, I had a rubbish time trying to get in even 5 minutes of Spider-Man while sat in a car park in one of the UK's major cities.
Okay, so we got about 60 meg download, latency of 21 milliseconds, which is that's not too bad. 3 meg upload, which might cause us some issues, but let's just see how we get on, right? Should be able to get a wee game of Spider-Man here, right? This is the worst road test ever.
Get to the Upper West Side. We're trying to shelter civilians, but I know making it easy.
Hit for dust. On my way.
It's terrible. It's really terrible.
That's just a voicemail.
Pete! Hey, Pete! Hey, May wanted me to call you. Things at the Veterans Center are not good. Convicts are trying to break down the doors. Mary Jane's here, but we're getting people out.
Max resolution. Maybe if we set that to 720p. Alright, I'm going to try it at 720p because maybe in this instance 1080p is kind of shooting for the moon a wee bit, and maybe 720p will give it a bit more of a ceiling, give it a bit more headroom.
All units, request drop.
That's just a voicemail.
Oh, there's so much artifacting. There's so much artifacting. There's like a full second of latency almost. I could sit and play it like this if it stays like this for a while, but it's so rubbish that I just don't want to. Oh, that's been a major disappointment so far. There's no danger whatsoever that that would have worked in an actual Iron Age hill fort. There could be a lot of factors limiting that. It could be my phone's not very good as a hotspot, although I haven't had any issues with it. And as I've said, I've actually tried a couple of different phones with this. It could be just that the local mobile network is rubbish. It could be the weather. It could be just that I'm sat inside what could be described as a Faraday cage, I guess.
And it was a similar story almost everywhere I tried to use the portal outside of my own gigabit home broadband. Other people have had success using cloud gaming over a tethered 5G connection, but I could never get it to work nicely. And I did try a couple of different phones. Coffee shop Wi-Fi is generally just too throttled and too oversubscribed to give you a decent, stable connection. Even other people's home broadband giving speeds well in excess of Sony's stated requirement of 13 megabits for a 1080p session scarcely worked for me. I tried playing a bit of Rogue Trader on the broadband in a house I was staying in with family in the northeast coast of Scotland. And I know what you're thinking, but the internet is fine there. It's all towns and cities and GlaxoSmithKline and industry and oil wealth. It's as least as civilized as New Jersey. And still, after about 20 minutes of a half-decent experience, the stream would crap out and either become so muddy as to be unplayable, or Sony would detect network issues and disconnect. This happened during the day, this happened in the wee hours of the morning, when everyone else was in bed, when the connection shouldn't be getting throttled, or whatever. And you know, in that situation, it's not my broadband, so it's not like I'm going to phone the ISP and ask why I'm being throttled because I'm not their customer. And look, none of this is the fault of the machine itself. The fundamental flaw of the PS Portal, outside of its original function as a secondary screen for your PS5, a thing it's actually very good at, is that cloud gaming is still, after all these years, how do I put this delicately, is crap. The problem that cloud gaming has, and will always have until you can get free 10 gigabit public Wi-Fi in Scunthorpe, is that it's always a harsh compromise between image quality and controller latency, and both of those things are hugely important for gaming. But look, I actually love the device itself. There are major things about the PS Portal stemming from its design focus as a peripheral that give it a real edge over the Switch 2 for me. The full-sized controls without any weird placings apart from the PlayStation button as discussed, but whatever. This being more or less a DualSense controller with a screen jammed into it, it feels nice and natural to hold. It's got proper grips to get your meat hooks around that you don't have to get from a third-party case. Because it's a thin client, literally, it doesn't need all the cooling apparatus and heat shielding that a proper high-performance device needs, and as a result, it's shockingly lightweight. It's got this gorgeous 1080p screen with colour reproduction that really pops. It's not an OLED panel, but I don't subscribe to this Reddity idea that any screen that isn't OLED is bad. I love my LG TV, but the overall cost of the device is so low that slightly milky blacks feel like a reasonable compromise. Overall, cloud gaming is a useful and no-brainer addition to the Portal's feature set. If my wife wants to play Ghost of Yotei on the big telly, I can easily load up my Rogue Trader save in the other room. It's that sort of everyday life use case where it shines. The cloud doesn't make it a PlayStation in and of itself, as some have suggested, and to be fair, Sony haven't ever claimed otherwise. Not even in this weird commercial where the boy from Stranger Things plays Astrobot at his work, because he works on big budget film sets, and I'll tell you this, they've got better internet than most places these days. No lies detected there. It'd be a massive stretch if they did an ad where, I don't know, Finn Wolfhard was trying to play The Witcher 3 in a crowded pub, but then why would anyone want to do that?
I knew a guy, and I hope he's not watching this, who only played the Switch version of The Witcher 3, and only played it, or only seemed to play it, while waiting for connections in Victoria train station. There's a sports bar in Victoria train station. And, like, if you're trying to tell me, yeah, that's you playing The Witcher 3. Is it hell, man? That's not playing The Witcher 3, that's you sitting in a pub.
Get real.
In conclusion, I actually love the PS Portal and I never expected to. Like, I think most people, I thought it was a daft as hell thing that about 6 folk would buy, but having been proven massively wrong there, the additional secondary function of cloud gaming does make it that little bit more useful. It's an Xbox and all. And for just shy of 200 quid, it's a genuine bargain. The closest thing to a bargain in hardware terms we're likely to see for a very long time.
You can get it for 175 quid brand new. On eBay, you can pick these up for between 100 and 130 pounds. Might be chancing your arm with a second-hand one, given that it is essentially a DualSense controller split in half, and I mean, at some point those sticks are going to start drifting like Colin McRae, so is that too soon?
If you're the sort of person whose handheld usage is largely house-based, it's very close to being a no-brainer, tantalisingly. And now I have to begrudgingly send this back to my boss, who I borrowed it from, after I've explained why I didn't actually go to an Iron Age hill fort to film this, like I promised.